Welcome to the first STR collab that is being streamed all over Zoom. If you're in the Zoom room, hello. It's good to see all of your faces. Just do me a massive favor and just make sure that you mute those microphones. Carrie, sorry, good to see you. Carol, literally just on a call with you in a second ago. Toby, good to see you. Just drop a little hi in the chat and let us know where you are joining us from. We've got people that have registered from literally all over. We've even got Australia. We've got Toby over in Lafayette, but we've got people from everywhere, mostly US. I will say there's not many Brits joining me on this call because it is 9 o'clock with us, but we will keep on going. We will keep on going. All right, so let's just do this. I'm going to let my esteemed guests, that are people that are with us, part of the STR Collab, to quickly introduce ourselves. And we've got a special guest joining us as well. So we'll start with our special guest, then we'll go Jeff and Madi. Just do a little quick intro, and then we'll get started with this episode.
All right. This is awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I think Madi and I kind of spoke about this a while back, and it's amazing to see this happen, especially to wrap up 2024. So my name is Ella Majiborski. I am the co-founder and president of AutoHost. For those who don't know, AutoHost is an AI-driven guest screening and verification platform. So we primarily focus on the hospitality short-term rental space, and we pretty much empower property managers with anything proactive around vetting guests, automating security procedures, collecting IDs, validating the actual identities, chargebacks, fraud, all the fun stuff. That's the side of the industry that we deal with. And yeah, here we are today.
Amazing. Thank you. Go on, Jeff.
All right, I'll go next. I'm Jeff. I'm the CEO and Host GPO. Host GPO is a buying group, so if you need to buy furniture, linens, mattresses, amenities, rugs, art, decor, supplies, locks, pretty much anything that goes into your vacation rentals, including now hot tubs and appliances, some of our newer partnerships. We are a one-stop shop to get all that stuff at discounts. We partner with a lot of name brands like West Elm and Pottery Barn, but also industry-specific hospitality companies like Standard Textile for sheets and linens and all of that good stuff. And before doing that, I was a vacation rental operator and operated a portfolio of about 150 properties. So been in this industry for about 10 years and always happy to be here talking about it.
Love that. I think you've done that more than once. That little intro.
Maybe once or twice.
And now we're going to go over to Madi, who's in the booth next door to Jeff in this co-working spot where they are hanging out. So, Madi, how are you doing?
Doing good, Mark. Thanks for having us on and putting this together. I'm Madi Rifkin, CEO and founder of Mount, for those that don't know. Mount essentially helps you connect to all the local businesses in your market, sell what they have to offer, and make money from that. Guests are not just coming to your place to stay. They are going to be doing things, so you might as well get a piece of that pie. So that's what we're all about. I've been in the industry for 3 years now, so still relatively new, learning as much as I can, but really came at it from a traveler perspective, and that's kind of what I still do. So I'm happy to be here.
And Madi goes viral on TikTok a lot with her partner in crime. So
Casey and Madi, the dynamic duo.
There you go. So we've got Stacy tuning in from sunny New Orleans. Carol is over in Utah. Toby in Lafayette, and people from elsewhere as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. And we are streaming this, so we are live everywhere right now, which is pretty cool. I haven't got a clue what it looks like, but I just assume we all look great. So all good. So for those who don't know me, my name is Mark Simpson, founder of Boostly. We give hosts the tools, the tactics, the training, but most importantly, the confidence to increase their direct bookings. And the reason why we wanted to put this together is we've been doing these STR Collab episodes sporadically throughout the year when we can get everybody together. Unfortunately, we're missing Mr. Arthur Culkin. He's on a flight somewhere, probably hot and sunny, knowing Mr. Arthur Culkin at this time of the year. But he couldn't be with us. But this is why we wanted to wrangle in Ella into the group so we could have a little predictions episode. As you can see, if you go anywhere near LinkedIn, there are 2025 prediction webinars and things happening. Jamie Lane is probably on every single one of them from what I've seen so far of Mr. AirDNA fame. And so I thought, well, let's do one that is going to be no data, just our opinions from people that are in this industry, pretty much obsessed with this industry, in it all the time. But I wanted it to be where it's not just us four talking. I wanted to get people into a Zoom room to share their experiences. Now, we've done a little bit of Google Docking backwards and forwards. We've got points each that we're going to bring to this, and then we're going to have a discussion around it. And when we are discussing it, I would love for you in the chat to give your predictions, your comeback, maybe a kickback to what we're going to be talking about. And I feel like what we've got written down between Madi, Jeff, Ella and I is going to spark up some pretty interesting conversations. So don't be afraid in the Zoom. Do leave a little chat. Do say hi and all that good stuff. But before we go forward, I thought it'd be cool to look back. And 2024 has been a bit of a, I put down stagnated year. And I feel there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, we've had a lot of elections happening this year. People are just sort of seeing what's happening there before making big moves. But in terms of the industry, my train of thought. But as we get everybody back in, I did for a couple of minutes. It was just literally me jump back in. I'm just going to get everybody to jump back in, don't worry. But as we were talking about that, and I will get my my esteemed panel back in with me. I wanted to just about to get their opinion on the industry, on what has happened this year. So I've just got my peoples to come back in. Hello, everybody. For some reason, my internet went, nah, you're not having this. For some reason, my internet said, nah, you're not going to be doing this at all. So I don't know how far we got with that. But I was just going to hand it over to yourselves and just ask for your sort of recap of 2024. What happened from a business point of view, personal point of view, and how you saw the industry in 2024. So we'll start with Ella, go Jeff, and go Madi while I go and give this internet a kick.
All right. Recapping, like, or is it just me?
Yeah, recap on how you saw the industry, the business. Yeah.
Am I echoing?
I don't hear an echo.
I just hear it. Give me that.
You're good. Go away. We'll go ahead when you can.
There we go. Hello?
Oh, better.
All right. 2024. So kind of, I guess internally, auto host wise, this was it was a really great year. I think both in terms of kind of awareness across the industry, night and day. Compare that to kind of when we just got things started in 2019, and to pretty much kind of vouch and pitch how hard it is to be objective in your screening and standardize things. I feel like we've really achieved a lot of went past that hump over this year, so that's been really great. AI is going to be a fun discussion topic, I think, for the industry, but even internally, we kind of, put our money where our mouth is, and so everything inside AutoHost with Roy in the lead. Roy's my co-founder, CEO. Everything is AI. So our meetings, our scheduling, our projects, our sales analysis, it's been really, really to see that we kind of we develop inside first, and that's really fun. And aside from that, just a personal pride moment for us as well. It's been a really big deal working with partners. So early on, and following our journey, we work a lot with direct clients, large operators, but there's been a lot of smaller sized clients who don't necessarily have access to the auto host screening and everything that we're doing. Whereas now we've really spent 2024 implementing, kind of embedding ourselves in quite a few guest apps and complementary platforms. So those core auto host services can go to other clients and they can be proactive. Quite a few more of those are coming in 2025. So that's really exciting.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Jeff. He's gone.
Maybe Jeff can't hear us.
Go on, Madi.
All right, I'll jump in. I would say from my perspective, 2024 was an interesting year for startups, companies just in the space, because this was one of the hardest years to raise funding. And so that's why not a lot of rounds were announced. If they were very large with established companies like Guesty or, some others. We saw some consolidation, not a lot, but I think we'll definitely see more of that. But because it was harder to raise, companies had to get lean. I probably was not the only one hearing this, where investors change their tune from growth to profitability, but also want growth, which do not go hand in hand. And so I think, if you were looking at the vendors, across the board, everyone's at different stages, but I would say most are going for profitability now instead of massive amounts of growth. So it just changes probably the way we all communicate, we talk to each other, all of that stuff. I'd say that was kind of what 2024 was.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. 110% relate to that. Jeff, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think host GPO wise, it was a great year overall. We were really fortunate and experienced a ton of growth, and also had a bunch of new partnerships, built out some new tech. So everything was great on that front. But as far as an industry, I think the biggest takeaways for me on the year were the concept of bifurcated growth. I think that was a super interesting thing to watch and track across the industry. And so really what that meant is things are growing, but only certain things, not everything. So whether that was larger format homes in more rural areas versus smaller shared stays in urban markets, or whether that was the luxury industry and accommodation space as opposed to economy type stays, right? The growth was both high single digit, low double digit in certain areas, and also there was contraction in other areas in the same industry of double digits. So just tracking where the growth was became an interesting part of this year, and something that's a little bit of an anomaly over kind of the past 10 years, to see really growth in some areas and declines in other areas, as opposed to more growth in some areas and some growth in other areas, right? Or across the board drops and decreases. So it was an interesting year of kind of bifurcated growth. And then the second thing would just be kind of professionalization, which I know we talked about, but I saw that really take place in a lot of ways. Most meaningfully, a lot of data around professional operators outperforming smaller operators or just non-professional operators in terms of ADRs. I thought that was a really interesting trend for 2024 looking backwards, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out next year too.
Okay, so let's move on to 2025. Now, again, these predictions, I know from my end, come with no data. It's just purely our views on what we're seeing from, reading interviews, articles, being part of webinars, being part of discussions, panels, conferences, etc. So the way that we're going to do this is each person, as you can see here, we've got at least 3. Jeff has got 4, and the 4th one is a real good one. So we're going to start with Madi, Jeff, myself, and then finish with Ella. And we're going to give our 3 or 4 all at once, and then we can unpack it, discuss it. And obviously, everybody in the Zoom, if you want to discuss it in the chat, you can do as well. So, Madi, you've got your first 3. Take as much time as you want discussing it, and then we can depack it afterwards.
Okay. I like the format. Sounds good. Yeah, so my first one, I actually just made a LinkedIn post about this last week, but I'm of the big belief that Airbnb and these other OTAs, like Airbnb's announced that they're going to get into this new business line all the time. So, one of the easiest low-hanging fruit for them would be to introduce what we consider to be an upsell, which is early check-in, late checkout, mid-stay clean, all the stuff that makes a ton of money, but that they are not playing in right now. Imagine if 7 million listings all of a sudden had early check-in and the system was able to control that, So I think that's going to make a lot of these features vendors are currently offering pretty obsolete. So they're going to have to think of other things to justify that cost per unit, cost per property, other than, you can offer an upsell and make some money from it. So I think there's going to be a lot of change in the industry next year when it comes to what vendors offer, if, OTAs go down that route. This one I put because there's a lot of talk about it. I would say it's kind of tangential to the short-term rental industry, but Airbnb experiences. I do think it will relaunch. What that looks like, I think, is going to be a lot different. When it originally launched, it was really only for individual hosts, similar to when they launched Airbnb, the STR platform. but they forgot about like the professionalized side of the industry, didn't build any tech connections. So if you were a professional experience operator, you couldn't list on Airbnb. So I think they'll right that wrong. And if they do that, they're going to definitely overtake a lot of what Viator offers and Get Your Guide offers right now. So I think those companies should be worried, and I think they are worried. Lastly, I would say my kind of largest prediction that I do think is going to come true is just I think there's going to be a lot more booking on social media. So like specifically Instagram. I put in here specifically that the guest does not know that is the book direct movement. That's why I didn't call it that, because it's not. It's just they like social media. They like what they see, and they're just going to book because it's super easy to do. So I think if you're not on there, like definitely get on there. I also think there's that element of trust. People are like, why don't I have more book direct bookings? If you just have a website, you don't have that element of trust that Airbnb has built, unfortunately. Like that is just something they have. So I would say Instagram is kind of giving that element of trust back to being able to book direct. So those are my three.
Let's leave. Well, first and foremost, thank you very much. So OTAs going to consolidate upsells. Airbnb experiences will be back, but it won't be as bad as it was in the past. And booking from Instagram is going to become a thing. So let's lead on number 3 then. So I don't know if you've seen this, but the thing that obviously gets my gears going is when somebody has built a really cool Instagram following, got a really cool account, and yet you go to click to book and it takes them to their Airbnb page. That to me,
Yeah, I've seen that.
that happens a lot. I don't know if anybody else has seen that. So when we say Instagram, are we meaning just Instagram, or could you replicate that onto something like TikTok as well? Or are we just saying Instagram because that's where you see the trend growing on this?
No, I think TikTok as well. I mean, all social media. I just said Instagram because I think it is more conducive to brands. Being a brand on TikTok is incredibly challenging, especially what I've seen in our space so far from property managers and hosts. So also, who knows if that's going to be here next year. So it was tried and true Instagram.
So you obviously work with and put on these amazing retreats with content creators, and obviously you chat to a lot of them, and these content creators are travel content creators who work with vacation rental companies and providers. So when you're chatting to them and they're telling you about their experiences of working, are they saying, listen, Instagram is my best platform to post this type of content on because I know it's going to get the most reach and the more chance of getting engagement on it?
No, actually, I would say right now they use both channels. Like it's definitely a game of diversification because one platform, as we've seen, TikTok is looming, like could just easily get shut down. And if that's where your entire following is, even as a brand, that's a really risky spot to be in. So they're on all platforms that do any form of short format video. So YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, probably some others. But what's really cool about TikTok is you can have a video go viral very randomly and it'll reach a few million people. You'll probably get a few 100,000 followers from that just because people click follow more often than they do on Instagram. But then you can start directing those followers to go follow your Instagram. So it's kind of a funnel because growing on Instagram is really hard to do, especially nowadays. So I've seen our creators do that really well. And they cross promote, like they do one piece of content posted on both platforms. We do the same thing. And sometimes TikTok will go viral. Sometimes Instagram will go viral. Sometimes they'll both go viral. It's really hard to predict. So playing the odds is always the best thing to do.
But then the most important thing that you have seen is that people will book from Instagram, but they need to have a strong, if only they had a strong website design agency that they could know where they could send people to from. I mean, it's hard, right?
Those are so hard to find though, Mark.
So
Those are
hard
like
to
nearly
find
impossible to find.
Really hard. Okay, Jeff, Ella, anything that you would like to add into Maddie's 3 predictions there? Don't all jump in at once.
I think that I'm so skeptical about the Instagram bookings, but then again, I see the magic in it because it removes the clutter. So seeing, 6 solid photos and a recommendation from a brand that you trust could really be that. It's so far for me that I'd love to see it. And I'm also curious whether it is going to be the younger generation that says, as we start traveling, we might as well go to the followers we're already following rather than start searching on booking.com and opening loyalty programs. So that's going to be the interesting part, like whether it actually happens, and if so, I guess age groups and who catches on. But that'll be interesting.
I hate to agree with the Instagram one because I like been really anti for a long time. But a couple weeks ago, I had a friend traveling upstate posted a picture of their stay at this really nice boutique hotel I'd never heard of before, and I booked it from their stay and from looking at the Instagram. So I am the 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 hypocrite who is booking off of Instagram and off of somebody's share. So there you go. I was like, oh, that looks really nice. Shocker, shocker.
And so anything else on OTAs are going to consolidate upsells, making these featured vendors offer obsolete, or Airbnb experiences? Anything else to touch on that before we move on to yours, Jeff?
I think no, I would say maybe on experiences. I'm curious. Have you guys done an Airbnb experience? Has anybody ever booked one?
I was just gonna say that. Maddie better say yes.
Yeah, no, I have, but it was a really bad experience, and I thought I was going to get like murdered, basically. No, it was bad. I booked it in Portugal as a way to I was by myself, and I was like, well, I'd prefer not to be by myself, so let me book an Airbnb experience and explore the town because I'd never been there before. And so it was a bike ride, and I got a text like, hey, meet me, or I'm your Airbnb tour guide or whatever, meet me in this parking lot. And I was like, okay. So I went to this parking lot. There was a big van, and I was like, oh, lovely. No one else was there. And then he pulled out 2 rusty bikes. We got on them, and luckily one other girl was there who was also solo traveling, so she joined. But then turns out he was hurt, so he could barely ride his bike. And then he was not a local. He moved there 3 months ago from Hungary, so he didn't know what we were looking at. So it was all bad.
So this comes in with one of the things that they are predicting with Airbnb is if and when they do bring it back, they are going to be much more picky at who is offering these experiences. It's not just going to be any random Hungarian who has a white van and sees Madi coming from a mile off. It's going to be this is going to be
that's not the quote from this whole hour. I don't know what is.
Hey, we've got much more to come. Don't you worry.
What a soundbite.
As always, the Zoom room is popping up with some absolute gems as well. Eric says 100% agree. Sending people from social to your Airbnb listing is like sending someone who has impressed you with a job interview to a link to their Fiverr page, which is very true. And Toby said 7 years ago he stayed at a boutique hotel in Colombia. They told him 100% of their bookings come through Instagram, which is cool. All right, fantastic. Well, as always, lovely insights. Let's swiftly move on. Jeff, you've got 4 absolute nuggets, so let's dive in.
So my first one kind of goes along with what Maddie was saying, but I think the word of 2025 is consolidation. I think that there's going to be consolidation across this entire industry, and I think it's going to happen first and foremost from the operators. So I'm seeing a lot of mid-sized operators start to get acquisition interest or interest in consolidation from larger operators. And so that's certainly going to happen. That's already happening. But I think the real prediction is that the smaller operators, so the 2, 3 unit, 5 unit folks, I think they're going to start consolidating into the 10, 15, 20, 40 unit folks. And I think that the market for consolidation for operators is going to start to move downwards into even smaller operators. Whereas before, nobody would realistically consider going through the work of acquiring or merging anybody who had less than a large number of units with enough revenue. I think that the way that the industry has started to move and the way that the rise of kind of rentrepreneurs in that post-COVID era is going to see some new phases of that world going into 2025. I think the successful people who launched in that era and have continued to grow are going to start picking up and consolidating the smaller folks there as well. I think that Airbnb's co-hosting marketplace, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later, but I think that that's a good indicator of that as well. You're going to see a lot of people who aren't just listing on that co-hosting marketplace. Hey, I have a home and I want to find somebody to co-host. I think you're going to find a lot of people who were either operating on one or two or three properties, looking for other people who are larger to kind of take over that entire portfolio. So I think unit consolidation in terms of management is going to be a big one. I also see, to Maddie's point about OTAs starting to offer some of the upsells of certain vendors. I think there's going to be vendor consolidation. I think that you're going to start to see a lot of vendors who maybe offered one thing offering 2, 3, 4 different things. I think you're going to see a lot of the guidebooks slash early check-in slash upsell slash those operators start to be off, those vendors start to be offered in one umbrella, and maybe some of these OTAs starting to acquire those vendors to offer their and some of the property management softwares starting to acquire those vendors to offer their services part of what they offer. So I think there's going to be some vendor consolidation. And then that goes to other areas as well, just consolidation. I think that ulterior and alternative booking channels and OTAs, so the collection sites that aggregate, hey, this is an amalgamation of top high-end luxury stays, or this is a list of all of the best kind of ski stays, and offering those booking panels. I think those will start to consolidate. Masterminds, those are going to start to consolidate. Conferences, those are going to start to consolidate, and you're seeing it happen already. I would say there were 50 conferences before, and now there's 40, and I think next year there's going to be 30, and I think that this is great. I think less conferences and more people is a good thing. And so I would just say consolidation overall is a big word for 2025. So that's kind of the biggest insight I have into next year. And then number 2, I would say I would expect Airbnb to get worse before it gets better. Along with all of these new launches that we're talking about and all these new initiatives that we're talking about, this is a company that has a track record of launching things quickly and poorly, and then iterating on them and trying to make them better faster. And so whether you were around for the Airbnb Plus, version 1, version 2, version 3, Airbnb Luxe, Airbnb Beyond, Airbnb, all of those iterations of product and launches that they had over time, I would expect the new rollouts to be equally shitty and probably get better quickly after that. And hopefully the rest of their offering doesn't get terrible during that time as well. And I think there's been a lot of conversations around the experience with Airbnb overall over the last few years. And certainly recently I've had some terrible experiences on the hosting side myself. So I would just expectedly expected it's going to get worse before it gets better from them. I would say prediction 3, I think the rise of experiential hospitality. So whether that's work retreats or health retreats or nature retreats or any sort of alternative stay accommodation, I think that that's going to continue. That's a trend that's really picked up in the middle of this year and continued at the end of last year. But what's interesting is that there's a lot of interest and a lot of learnings happening this year. These properties take a really long time to build out, scope, and get off the ground. So I think that that's going to start happening in 2025. So we'll be seeing and hearing a lot more of those over the course of the year. And they're seemingly doing very well from the folks that I've talked to in that space, and the host GPO members who are in that world seem to be doing quite well. And then the last one, I would say there is a big possibility for 2025 of the return to the BRRRR strategy, the return to build to stay accommodations. And I think that as interest rates start to move potentially, and as the economy is starting to get better, I'm certainly seeing a lot of, the markets definitely getting stronger, seeing a lot of investors talking less about leases, talking less about co-hosting and management, and a lot more conversation shifting back towards purchasing. And so I could see a lot of operators going towards purchasing, at least here in the US, which has been something that has been not a strong part of the market over the last 18 months, certainly. So I would keep eyes open for people looking to re-implement purchasing, rehabbing, and renting across the US especially.
Wow. 4 absolute gems there. So just to recap, consolidation is coming in every aspect of this industry, even conferences, which is a fun one to delve into in a second. Airbnb will get worse before it's get better. Who said it's ever been good? The rise of alternative stays and experiential hospitality, 100%. I see it a lot. Mr. Isaac French, who had Live Oak Lake, he even now has sold his business and started up a company called Experiential Hospitality, which is cool, and then returned to BRRR and built to stay. Strong economy. Yes, absolutely. So, Madi, Ella, anything that you want to touch on with those 4 points? Anything that stood out to you?
I think alternative stay is 100%. It's like the next generation of revenge travel. Now, so we had that stage. I'm a little sad we're giving up that term. It's almost like I wish it stayed and we always get to do revenge travel, which is there's something more passionate about it. But it's almost like the next stage now. People are still, it's almost like you get to treat yourself, and people are recognizing a lot more the whole, I don't want to be where, the hustle and bustle and the harder things. I want to get the hell away and disconnect. And there are operators that are promoting themselves very, very well in that space. And so, I mean, me as a traveler, I'd be seeking it out, and I see that happening. So 100% +1 on that one.
Any of the other points that stood out, or?
I mean, for me, I think the consolidation is like right on track. I'm really curious to see what that translates to this coming year with the smaller vendors that are stuck in between that seed Series A stage of, are companies going to be shutting down? Is it a merger? Is it an acquisition, a fire sale? Like there's so many options. And I wonder who's going to be kind of leading the charge there. I don't know. We'll have to see. And also what that means for the tech stack of all these operators, because I think everyone's tech stack is way overcomplicated and everyone could be very pleased with some consolidation.
Yeah. I mean, going on consolidation, it's one of those where you see companies like, there's certain companies that are white labeling their offerings, and that's where PMSs are tapping into that. So they're not acquiring sort of guest verification, they're white labeling off other people, right? Or what's happening is you've got all of this money being pumped in from the equity groups into Hostaway, but yet they're yet to do anything with their money. So what are they going to do? And they've always said they're either going to buy it or build it. So, but they haven't done out yet. Speaking from a vendor who got approached to be acquired, I can definitely see this coming. I rejected it because it just wasn't right at the right time. But I've gone through every single one of the things that you said this year, Madi. It's like gone through potential acquirement to the cash flow is not looking too good, to all of the things now and coming out on the other side of it, which is really like mad that what is happening this year. It's sort of, like I said, being stagnated because people are kind of waiting, but you sort of see that something's going to happen next year. Going back to the conferences point, I think what has happened is you've got your established players like your Thermas and your bigger pockets that have been around for a while that put on these big, lavish 3,000 plus attendee conferences. And then what's happened post, you talk about revenge travel, there was like revenge conferences coming out of lockdown. There was a lot of influencer conferences that came out on the back end, and where people who built up big followings because of lockdowns with Clubhouse and stuff, they put on conferences and events. And STR Wealth is the one that comes to mind, right? Really successful conference filled of everything that people who attached to them don't like, these young rentalpreneurs, Airbnb, all that sort of thing. But then it made a bit of a wave in this industry. And then on the back of that, everybody else started their own conferences. And conference 1 went really well. Conference 2 came about, and it's like, shit, this is a lot of hard work. And so what you don't realize when you're putting on a conference or an event is that it is a full-time job. And I feel like you're right. What's going to happen is a lot of these influencer events will slow down, will stop. And you've seen it already in 2024. A lot of people have announced that's the final one. And that will be replaced with, I've said to you, Madi, retreats, masterminds. That is where they will go, because I feel like that is much more easier to put on, still has a sense of building a community and do a good work. And it will mean that those that do put on big events like Therma have got an amazing opportunity to get better. Bigger Pockets, a phenomenal conference, one of the best that's out there. And I feel that people like Therma can learn a lot from Bigger Pockets. They put on a really good big scale event, because it is hard. As soon as you go over that 1,000 mark, to go from 1,000 to 3,000 is so hard, because you are very limited on the venue that you can put on. Obviously, people want to attend, and you've got to appeal and make so many people happy, and it is very hard to do. So I feel like you're right. We're going to have these big conferences that we'll go to, whether it's DAM, Verma, Bigger Pockets, whatever, and the smaller ones will just sort of fizzle out, and they'll go to like morph into masterminds, retreats, etc. And it's really interesting about the properties. If you just look at the UK, look at what Host and Stay are doing. This year, they had a ton of money pumped in, and they are just acquiring left, right, and center. Whenever Dale announces another short-term rental company he's acquired, I just send them the GIF saying, can't stop, won't stop, because they are just going, right? And that is going to happen more. And it's very interesting. Again, will this mean, because they're picking up like medium sort of term, medium sort of in revenue size companies. What happens to the smaller ones? What's going to happen there? This marketplace from Airbnb, very interesting. Like you say, does that mean that people will go on there and just try and sell to a medium that will then get rolled up and sold to a larger company, and what that's going to mean? So very, very good. Very interesting. Thank you very much, Jeff. Anything else you want to add on that before we move on?
Nothing else for me.
We're all good. We're all good. Really good. All right, my turn. And then we will move on to the lovely Ella. So my three. So my first one, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I can see this becoming more of a thing as it gets regulated and sort of told it has to happen. But I think it's going to be rest in peace key boxes or physical keys. I've already seen, and I was doing a bit of research on this. So Spain have announced it. Well, Alicante City has announced it. Italy is putting a stop to it. And in Dubai, in end of February, they have announced that they want every single one of their operators to be getting rid of the physical key for security reasons. I mean, if you think about it from a logical point of view, and this is such a Marmite conversation. This, you go into a Facebook group and talk about this, you're going to get people throwing up grade 2 listed doors saying, lockbox that, you dick. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very, but if you think of it from a logical point of view, if you've got a physical key and I come and stay in your property, as soon as I get that key, I can go to the local locksmith, they'll cut me a copy and I'll have a copy of that key. I can check out, I can come back a week later, doesn't matter who's in there, and I can just go and rob who's in there, right? Or even worse, right? That is literally the nuts and bolts of it. No pun intended. So if you think about it in that retrospect, then yes, having either, these new fancy digital keys or whatever like that, that is going to be the next step. But how do you implement that? Just like with anything regulated, how are you going to implement that? And that is going to be the interesting thing to see. But I feel like the physical key is definitely on its way out with our industry. Second thing is I've been watching how vendors, especially over the last year, have been producing content. And what I've noticed is AirDNA, Bigger Pockets, Hospitable, they are tapping into UGC, which is user-generated content. So they are working with content creators to create their content, and then they're using it as ads. Logify as well. That's another company I've noticed doing this recently. Why are they doing it? Well, these content creators are experts at what they do. They're experts at getting attention. And by working with them, instead of giving the phone to Sally in the office, no offenses to any Sallys out there, but it's like they know what they're doing and they can create good content. Right. And Madi, you know this topic more than probably anybody else that I know. But I feel what will happen even more next year is that more vendors and brands within our industry will be reaching out and working with more content creators to produce their sponsored posts, their content for them. And I think this is just a good thing. And I think now is the time more than ever for everybody, not just vendors, but for every business, to evolve or get left behind. I've spent the last sort of decade trying to convince Gen X, boomers and millennials to embrace, get on social media. Now with AI, and especially now that we've got more Gen Zs, and even like my eldest, he's 12 and he already knows how to create content better than me. It's not so much as, are you going to post? It's, what are you posting? And with AI and everything coming in, it's going to be so easy for everything to look the same. Everything's going to be a copy and paste. I go on LinkedIn now and I can tell who's using AI to create their posts. Just the amount of emojis that you see in their social media posts. We've all seen it, right? And it's not going to be a case of just posting. It's going to be a case of quality. So especially for a vendor and for a brand, it's quality over quantity. And how can you tap into that? And is it working with more content creators to create this type of thing? Who knows? But I feel like that is where we're going to potentially see more and more next year. And the final one is, I don't think we're going to 100% get there by the end of 2025. We're probably looking more into 2026, 2027. But we are going to have more and more AI agents within our day-to-day life. It's Google DeepMind just showcased this with Project Mariner. And the example that they showed was tourism related. It showed how this AI agent took over a Chrome and it booked a flight. You substitute booking a flight to booking a hotel room or booking a short-term rental, and it was so easy to see how this could be done. Like I say, in a year's time, do I think your Siri device is going to be doing that for you? No, because Siri is crap. Apple intelligence is awful. But will we get there maybe with Google, with DeepMind project, with insert your name of AI? I think we're getting closer. I was on booking.com just doing a little bit of research yesterday. I did a couple of searches and I looked at the left and I saw that there was smart filters. And instead of me having to click around to say, right, I need a family of 6, I'm looking at these amenities, I just typed it in. It said, what do you want? So I did my search, like wherever I was looking to go to, did my dates, and then I just said, type what you want for your filters, for your amenities, typed it all in, boom, done. So it saved me time. And I feel like one thing that the human loves is convenience, right? We will give up security. We will give up our privacy for convenience any day of the week. And I feel like this will be the next step. We're going to start to give our devices, our technology, our screens so much about us in exchange for convenience. Because when we can go, oh, Alexa, I'm going to be going to New York next week. Book me a flight. I need to be staying close to Central Park. This is my budget. And it will just spit it out and book it for you. I knew my Alexa was going to kick in when I said that. But anyway, I feel like that's where we're going to get to. And I think we're getting ever so closer to it. And the final thing about that, especially for direct bookings and especially for people with websites, is that AI relies on data from readable sources online. So it's more important now more than ever that if you want to get ahead of this, if you've got a website, right? And I'm not talking about those crappy free ones that come with your PMS or these lead pages or landing pages from Go High Level. As in a proper WordPress website, you've got to really make sure that it's packed with as much information about your business and your properties, your amenities as possible. Because when the AI is doing all of this search and is doing all this looking around, it's going to be looking and it can find your direct booking site. If you're just hiding away on Airbnb, you're going to get lost amongst all of that. So it's really important that you have that ready so AI can read it. And that's my 3. Anybody like to say
Those are
about
solid. Solid predictions. I like, I think it's a really good point you're raising around the rise of AI agents, we know that, but I think focusing on what's the actual use case and how it's going to happen. And, what you ended with, therefore, make sure your site pushes that forward. It's pretty much going to be like the new version of SEO, right? Like, how do you optimize and how do you make sure that whatever's crawling your site presents, puts your best foot forward. So definitely, there's a proactiveness to take care of.
I'll push back on that one. And I know you did say likely more 2026, late 2025, but I do think the chat functionality, it's been really interesting to see talking to operators that have started to implement various AI chat functionality in their rentals, and it's just not great yet. I think it will be great, but some of the examples are just hysterical. Like, people saying, asking about, oh, well, I want to check in at 3 p.m. and is that okay? And then the AI saying, oh, well, this is Eastern time, so check in isn't for until whatever 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Eastern time. And then the guy saying, well, I don't, something, and then the chat responding automatically with, oh, well, do you need me to explain to you how time zones work? And like, obviously, like, that makes a lot of sense, but like, that is a ridiculous thing to say to a guest. And so I think that two things will have to happen before AI really, really, from a chat perspective, starts to get implemented into vacation rental operations. One, it's going to have to get better, and that will take time. And I don't think people are willing to spend the time to train their AI tools yet on their properties or on how to communicate. And even at that, it might not be subtle enough or nuanced enough to kind of go through the chat. And two, I think that until AI is able to offer consistently something better than just replacement value, it won't realistically start to be implemented. And I've seen some of those things start to take place. So AI's ability to do things like search your previous review history and make suggestions on what needs to happen, or pull, like, that type of stuff is cool, and it's different, and it's beyond just replacement value. But I don't see it taking hold quite yet in the chat functionality feature.
Madi?
Yeah, I was just going to add on the other point you made with the UGC content, that even the brands that are doing it now, I don't think a lot of people don't understand the difference between UGC and influencer content. And they think if you're an influencer, you're the one creating the UGC content, which leads to really expensive bills. So if you find an influencer and you're like, hey, can you create me a piece of content? They're going to charge you as if they're an influencer. It's like a few $1,000s down the drain. You can find amazing content creators that have, not an impressive following, that are going to create you amazing content. And UGC is like, from either, if you're a property manager, it would be from the guest perspective. If you're a vendor, it's probably a host or like someone pretending to be a host because they're acting in the video, like promoting your product, whatever it may be. Those creators, you could get those videos for 50 to 100 to $200. Like, they're not that expensive. So I think they're still not using UGC correctly. And I would change the prediction to hopefully people will understand how to use UGC in 2025 and really implement that into their strategy.
That's an even better one that I wrote down. So, but yeah, and going back to the AI-ness of it all, yeah, it can only be as good as what the data that you are giving it. So I feel like when we're talking about being proactive, now is the time to be really solidly getting your data down, getting systems and structures and SOPs and things like that. Everything has got to be documented because it has to read it from somewhere. Now is the time to start, because yeah, you're right. We've all seen these hilarious things, but
they're hilarious. But you're talking about, when you're talking about what that content that's going to feed it. I mean, I've talked to a lot of operators that say, hey, well, we've been using VAs for years to respond to guests, and I don't want my AI learning and spitting out worse versions than what my VA is saying. That's not what I'm looking for. And so, to your point, Mark, I really think it takes a lot of time and training and inputs beyond just hey, read all my previous messages to guests.
Definitely an interesting one.
I think 2025 will be a prep year for that. So you're right that we won't be booking with it yet.
Yes.
But what Mark is saying, like, lay the groundwork. People are going to be using the AI agents in the meantime, just as like your phase one, your research. So if you had a really, really smart and diligent assistant, go do the research for me and then give me the final decision. That's going to happen this year, probably. I wouldn't drag it to 2026. So prepping for it is probably smart.
Love that.
And Mark, I know we're going to move on, but I will, and I know you want to do this just based on gut and not based on data points. But I do have a data point for your first one about lock boxes and key boxes going away.
Look at you bringing the data.
Well, it's an anecdotal data point, but I can tell you that we've had, so Host GPO, we partner with Schlage and Yale and all the lock companies. We've had a dramatic increase over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 months of people reaching out to order their locks key to like, with the idea, and what that means is, let's say you ordered like 10 locks for your 10 units or whatever it is, keying the actual key, having it ordered so it's already the same key, physical key for each one, so that each property doesn't have to have a lockbox on it. There's been a big increase in key to like demands. And I wonder how much of that is from people saying, I don't want lockboxes, or we don't want to put lockboxes at each of our properties anymore.
Interesting one. And thanks for bringing.
I'm surprised they're still around.
Thanks for bringing the data.
I think this should have been last year's prediction.
Well, I feel like there comes a certain time where it has to get forced, and obviously like Dubai, Italy, and some areas of Spain are starting. So where some follow, where some lead, some will follow. All right. Before we jump into Ella, we've got some lovely stuff in the Zoom. Shout out to BPCon was Eric's. And then he also said, yes, you don't need the actor. You need the director producer making your content. Great point, Madi. Find great storytellers on the media production side is a big difference maker. So lovely. Love that. Keep coming in the Zoom if you've got anything to add. All right, Ella. So you've got free predictions right here. So go with number one, please.
Yeah. So I hate to be like the bearer of doom and gloom. I feel like I'm really focused, but that's the world we live in. So we're here to make sure, that hospitality stays focused on hospitality, but we have to stay on top of it and realize what trends on the risk and the bad apples, and kind of what, if shit were to hit the fan, what kind of shit, which fan, how do we handle it? So I think that staying ahead of the curve is that much more important in what we're seeing. So anyways, that was like the preemptive. I think my predictions are a little bit, they're scary, but it's not, because there's a way to be proactive. So here goes. First of all, I think that, so we talk a lot about professionalization, and that's across the board, but I think that we don't go as far as saying that the result of that, we mentioned consolidation, but you're also just going to see straight up churn. So some will consolidate, but many of the inventory holders and the master lease kind of people are going to have their selection. And you're already seeing operators, property management companies kind of realizing that. And the leading ones they're yelling it from the rooftop. So they're priding themselves in their practices and their inventory and their tech so they're realizing that their marketing and their professionalization is not just to the guest as the audience, but it's also to those inventory providers that can start switching around. So that's going to be a big, I think, result of professionalization, that some churn will definitely happen, and a big shift to those companies that choose to stay kind of ahead of that, and they're going to convince those inventory providers to be trusting them with their portfolio. So again, just staying ahead of it. So there's things to do, but I'm seeing a few companies doing it really, really well, and just really taking pride in how they operate. And we're getting closer to, again, the old school short-term rentals and traditional hotels industry merging. I think now we're pretty much, it's one and the same. So that was one. So kind of being ready for churn. The second one, AI is a big topic, but I think that in 2025, we're going to start discussing a little bit more, or being aware of the dark side of it. So the positive hype will continue. We're going to keep talking about how we can best utilize it. I'm expecting all of the apps and vendors out there to be integrating AI into their process, because there's so much more you can accomplish with less resources and less time. Yes, but we are going to enter a new kind of phase of seeing bad AI in action, because it's accessible. So not all players are good players, and not everybody has the best intentions. And if AI gives you more ways to exploit operators that are not ready for it and don't have their guard up, the most straightforward example is just fake profiles. And if before a fake profile was kind of a picture that you can spot with the naked eye, then now you're getting into really, really convoluted and complex. There's fake IDs and socials, and the message they'll be sending and the cover story that they have is going to be really, really good. And so you're kind of going to need those proactive ways to spot those in advance, because there will be a lot of taking advantage of it. So the loopholes in our process I think is really that. So we're going to have to probably either use AI or use more processes, but becoming more aware of risks and loopholes is going to be a big part. So AI will also get exploited, which I think is sad, but if we're ready for it, we're better off. And the last point, which is kind of a result of the first, but I also wanted to touch on fraud in the short-term rental space. And so it's not necessarily that AI necessarily will cause more fraud. What I'm seeing is that tech is improving on both sides of that spectrum. And so what we're expecting to see is a bit of a shift to actually exploiting social engineering. And for those that don't know what it is, social engineering is when you're basically kind of looking to exploit the weakest link, which is humans. So it doesn't matter how safe your tech is and how many security measures you have. At the end of the day, if somebody can get a password out of your employee or sell them a sob story with a fake profile and get through the door, or these types of things, that kind of advanced tech that, verification measures that we're using, some fraud in some parts of chargebacks and things could be handled a little bit better, and I love seeing that. So every single kind of operator and companies, they're aware of the fact, we're all aware of who's the merchant of record. People are trying to both cover their asses but also make sure that as little money is lost to fraud. But given that people will be kind of your weakest link in the company, so the agents that are accepting reservations, processing the credit cards, collecting information, and so human error, I think it's something to be aware of. Our biases, judgment calls, gut feelings, that's kind of, anybody who has, and yeah, from the guest screening perspective, anybody who has the more outdated manual processes, I think are going to become easy targets. So
to the future AI overlords that are watching this, I make a really good washing up. So I know that we humans are the weakest link, but please spare me. It's cause this is getting.
I think you're good. You're set now. This was good.
Yeah. No, Ella,
Yeah.
really, really good. So for me, the second one is you've hit an nail on the head. Like AI, we're talking about it and all these cool hype things, but there is the other side of this. So for a business owner, how can we spot, in your opinion, how could we potentially spot and combat this other side of AI that could potentially happen? Like you could have a guest, easily drum up a fake ID, etc. How could we spot that? What can we do?
So again, kind of staying as objective as possible and using automation. So I think that before I ran a property management company at the very early stages. Telling a bad guest from a good guest was a gut feeling strategy. So you asked me, what did you do as your strategy? I'm like, hold my fingers crossed, I guess. And you look at a guest, you look at their story, and you're like, well, that seems sketchy. I'm going to trust my gut feeling and not let them through. So I think becoming aware of the fact that that's a way to exploit you is already important. And so the more objective you go and consistent with your screening. So this isn't about, let's look at some parameters and kind of go whether somebody looks sketchy or not, but the more data points you can have, the more objective data points you can bring into the equation. So their credit card needs to check out, and their profile needs to be legitimate, and their ID needs to match their credit card, and the selfie needs to match that. And by all means, any individual piece of that equation could and will be able to, more and more as we progress with AI, get kind of faked. But the more of those data points you have, the less likely somebody is. And then you're getting into two-factor authentications, and a lot of identity verification tools out there are very much aware of it. So you're kind of combining online tools and tests with the two factors and everything you can do to make sure the person is who they say they are. If you're small, you don't necessarily need automation. You just need to be you just need the diligence. The larger you get, by all means, automating is the best way to standardize that process and make sure that the final decision isn't in the hands of kind of team members, wherever they're from, and their gut feeling or personal biases or whatever that is.
So this means that it all comes back to the blockchain, which means that meme coin that I bought in 2022 might actually be worth something sometime in the near future. Fingers crossed.
I'm not going to sign off on that. That wasn't my prediction, but I'm rooting for you.
Jeff, Madi, anything you wanted to add to those amazing points from Ella? We're good.
Nothing specifically other than just absolute shock and horror of the possibility of nefarious AI worries me quite a bit.
Let's leave this panel, this webinar, with something lighthearted, and that is Airbnb. So let's talk about the impact of Airbnb's multi-billion-dollar business spin-offs that Brian Chesky has been talking about, and what impact will that have on the rest of the industry? What does that mean? So what does that mean in you? Because obviously we've talked about it a little bit. The marketplace, the host marketplace was something that they have launched. How are they going to monetize it? Nobody knows. But then that does leave the door open, like we've mentioned above, for other things. So what do you feel like this Airbnb spinning off, what does it mean for the industry as a whole? And whoever wants to jump into that first.
I can jump in first because I think I'm going to say something that you guys might not agree with. But I feel like it's absolutely positive. I think it's funny when people in our industry bash Airbnb and they're like, oh, they're the worst company in the world, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you have to remember Airbnb is what got this industry where it is, brand wise. It's what made normal people comfortable staying in someone else's house and a short-term rental in general. Like, yes, you would do that in a very large vacation home in Florida, but like it was not widely accepted 10 years ago. And so I think the brands is what continues to push this industry forward and grow it a lot faster than it probably otherwise would be growing.
Great. Lovely. Anybody got anything to add on to that?
I just think the expansion to kind of going beyond accommodation is one of those things where you don't necessarily have the advantage of being so set in the market. So on the one hand, they're big and they can afford it, but you're kind of going back into startup mode. And that's kind of where I'm a little bit skeptical to see how they juggle their expertise and market share. I mean, with all the shit we can say about them, at the end of the day, I mean, they're incredible in what they do. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate. So in that sense, it's going to be, I mean, their marketing around it, how they push, do they end up cannibalizing some of their efforts? Like, that's going to be really interesting to watch and see, are they able to maintain their core while expanding something? And again, experiences in the past kind of falling a little flat makes me just, I mean, skeptical but curious.
Jeff?
I think what will be the most interesting is not just how it affects our industry, but the other industries that they're talking about getting involved in. And I think that there is a possibility that by Airbnb growing horizontally into other industries, they're actually going to bring additional demand back into the short-term rental space. So an example of that is as the line between short-term rentals and hotels starts to become more blurred, and as you're able to book more things that feel like hotels on Airbnb, I think that there is a possibility that it drags more attention back into short-term rentals from other industries, of which in the travel sector, we are still wildly underrepresented, in my opinion.
Do you reckon they acquire or do you reckon they build?
I think they're a build company more than anything else. Most of the things that they've acquired just to destroy, and kind of incorporate into what they're doing and rebuild on their own. So I would expect them to continue to build, and if anything, acquire for people and speed, but still build. That's my guess.
It's a good guess because that's what they did with Game Planner.
There's some verticals that I think really align with what they do. So, I mean, they want to expand into car sharing. I'm going to bet my money on the fact that they'll be doing pretty well there. So, and they have no reason to acquire, I guess. I mean, again, my money's on they're going to build, but that's a direct, I think, extension of what they do right now. So car sharing, I buy it. Real estate programs that they want to get into, I don't know if they are the credible source to kind of the more old school industry that is real estate. So again, ballsy move.
I like what they're doing on that front, though, because as someone who spends all my money on rent here in New York City, when I'm not here where I'm traveling for work, it would be super nice to just flip that on and be like, yeah, my building accepts Airbnb. Like, it's just natural. It's a natural fit. My building would never do that because it's owned by a landlord who's very independent. But if you live in like a Gray Star or something, for example, like it would be a compatible system. That would be pretty cool.
In the Zoom chat, somebody put, like most things they acquire, it is to destroy ... which is also true of my 4-year-old, which I thought was hilarious. Eric, brilliant. And Eric also put a really nice little chat comment above saying, fantastic thoughts. Thanks for sharing. One takeaway is that as the industry matures, observational adaptability is key. Leaving your STR portfolio on autopilot is a recipe for a slow demise, which is just, Eric, we need to have you up here. That was brilliant little takeaway. Right, let's sign off then by, first and foremost, thank you very much for giving up your time, the three of you, for doing this. It has been fantastic. And apart from my little tech snafu, it's all gone swimmingly. So I wanted to sign off by each of you letting everybody know what you and your company are going to be working on for 2025. Any hot scoops, any things that we can tease for the audience? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. So I give a little bit of a kind of a heads up on at the beginning, but continuing really to make sure we can be embedded across the industry. So Mark, you mentioned white labeling. So some consolidation doesn't always have to be two companies consolidating, but we've seen a lot of PMSs or guest experience apps that are taking to the next level, and they're doing that horizontal consolidation to make sure that they can offer everything. We've seen a lot of demand on that front, and that way we kind of get to, from AutoHost strategic perspective, we get to really keep focusing on the tech. So we don't have to chase the individual, the smaller operators necessarily, but rather make the tech available. So more of those integrations where we're really embedded and we're a lot more accessible. We got a lot of feedback in previous years. I mean, it's not fair that we're too small and, if we want to vet our guests. So we took that to heart and really are investing in those types of partnerships and getting embedded, whether white labeled or not. I think we've been really successful and we're really proud of it, of getting that brand out. So a lot of the times it's not white labeling, it's in a pure pride. I mean, the screening part is powered by AutoHost, and we want to keep doing that.
Awesome. And what's the domain? Where can people go to find out more about what you've built?
So, I mean, autohost.ai is the domain. We have lots of information shared on LinkedIn, always accessible. You can reach me anytime. So, and then, I mean, our website, our blog. So anything new that's coming and new integrations are always going to be posted.
Nice. Jeff, what's going on in the world of Host GPO?
Host GPO lined up for another banner year. We're really excited about a bunch of stuff. So recently we signed a bunch of partnerships. I mentioned our new hot tub vendor, all the lock partners. We recently partnered with GE for appliances, and the other big one was Restoration Hardware, which was very exciting for our members. So those are some of the ones that just closed recently. We have a handful of partnerships that I cannot talk about yet because they are not launched, but they are done and they're going to be massive. So we're very excited about launching those, and our new product. So the new Host GPO portal, for those of you who haven't been migrated yet, you're going to get migrated tomorrow. So get excited, because when you log in, it's going to look all different and fancy. So very excited about that. And looking forward to a strong 2025. So we're Host GPO, G for group, P for purchasing, O for organization. Host GPO at all things social, and follow me on LinkedIn, where I do most of my musings.
Nice. And look at you, Host GPO shipping as much as what OpenAI are this month. 12 days of shipment.
We're shipping nonstop over here.
There you go. And anything else big happening? Obviously, you've got your pickleball tournament coming back for Verma 2025. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, bigger and badder than ever. So anybody who's going to Verma next year, the GP Open Pickleball Tournament is going to be off the charts this year. We raised 10 grand for advocacy last year. Ambitious goal, throwing it out now. We're looking for 20 grand next year. That's our goal. Madi and I very involved in getting that live. And STR Collab very much a big part of getting that to happen as well. So
seeing it's in Vegas, all you need to do, take that 10 grand, go to a roulette table, put it on red or black, and then you've instantly doubled it. You don't have to then go for all the faff of all the other faffs.
It was the FedEx founder. Is that the story? You guys heard about that? Where company was pretty much bankrupt, and he had like 100 grand left, and he had owed a bunch of money, or a couple hundred grand left, and he literally pulled his entire life savings and went and bet everything on black and doubled it, and then covered his bet, and then like built FedEx from that. I think it's FedEx. There is a story there.
That is a story. That is a story right there.
Yeah.
And Boostly will be back to try and retain its title at the pickleball tournament. Fun. All right, Madi, what's happening in your world?
Well, this is not public knowledge yet, but I guess it's about to be. We have officially launched the consumer-facing app for Mount. It's called Mount Travelers. Essentially, we have these amazing hidden gems, and we were like, why stop sharing them if you can't stay at a short-term rental that is using us? So now when you're anywhere in the world, you can access the hidden gems. You can contribute to the community, and essentially the goal with that app is to put like that Michelin star stamp on things to do, places to stay, all that stuff when you're traveling. So not just restaurants, but Also for the Gen Z generation, the Michelin star is very antiquated, but I will still eat there. It's still yummy. But yeah, no, that's what we're up to. I would say we're also throwing some epic content creator retreats next year. We have one slated for Jackson Hole already, possibly Iceland, possibly a trip around the UK. So our creators are going to be traveling.
Amazing.
That's exciting.
Amazing stuff. Okay, and Boostly wise, we are going to be venturing into our own little white label. That'll be pretty cool. We're going to be launching a product called Connect in 2025, which I'm excited to showcase more about. And then we're just going to continue in being the company that the OTAs don't want you to know about. And with that being said, the STR Collab, we have a Facebook group. If you would like to be part of it, just go onto Facebook and type in STR Collab. It will come up. The Facebook group will come up. If you struggle to find it, send me a message and I'll get you a link in there. Whenever we have another event coming up, whether it's virtual or in person, that'll be the place where you can find out about it first. How many of these have we done this year? I want to say 6 or 7. We've done a fair few. So we will obviously try and do more in 2025. As you can imagine, as life gets busy, these sort of fall by the wayside, but we will try and do more if you want us to see us do more. So Jeff, Ella, Maddie, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. Everybody who's been in the Zoom room, there's been some funny comments that I'll go back on afterwards, but for those that have stayed with us throughout, thank you very much. And for those who are managing to see us online, wherever it is, even after that tech snafu, thank you very much as well. All right. Is there anybody who wants to finish off with saying anything that needs to be said, or can we call this a close? Oh, we're good.
It's a lot of pressure. Happy
We
New
can call it
Year.
a close. And happy holidays, happy New Year.
Happy holidays, happy New Year. Fantastic. All right, all.